Spotlight on Newcastle County, or Spotlight On for short. I'm Tony Prado, Director of Communications for Newcastle County Government. And Spotlight is a hard news program that will take a look at news happening within and without Newcastle County government. And for today's show, I'm pleased to say that Harry Ellen Minahan, the president of the Christina Board of Education, and interim superintendent Dr. Robert Andrzejewski are here to talk about the upcoming Christina Referendum, which is going to ask you, the voters, for a tax increase that will help them implement some of the programs that they would like to do with the students. And I appreciate them coming in here to answer the tough questions. Thank you very much for being here today, guys. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
And I just want to say, Madam President, it's very nice to meet you. You know, when did you join the Christina School Board?
I was elected to the board in 2013, July of 2013. But I had been a teacher in Christina for 18 years, and then I retired.
Wow, so we have some expertise on the school board. That's good. And Dr. Andrzejewski, it's good to see you, my old friend. We spent a lot of time together. I was a pain in the butt reporter for the Hockessin Community News when Dr. Andrzejewski was the superintendent for 11 years.
12 years, actually.
12 years, I apologize,
yeah.
at the Red Clay School District. And, you know, it's great to see you in Christina.
Well, I'll tell you what, we had a good time. I mean, I remember, you know, going through, we had a lot of exciting times in Red Clay. Controversial as well as exciting, and you were always a fair reporter. And,
thank you.
And I was so happy to see you kind of graduate. Now you're doing TV shows. You went from print to the TV. So
yeah,
that's really cool to watch you grow and your family as well.
Thank you, thank you. It's been fun, and I'm a Christina parent now.
Yes, I hear.
We're in Glasgow, so you know, and I got to say, for those who don't know, Dr. Andrzejewski, during his time in Red Clay, he's the one who brought back the old Conrad High School Redskins. I got to give you credit for that. I was the one who broke the story, you know, not to toot my own horn, but it was a great idea. It's the kind of vision that you want to see in a superintendent. And I think for all intents and purposes, Conrad High School, you know, if you could just say for a minute, that's been a success, hasn't it? And so many other things. I mean, Charter School Wilmington, Delaware Military Academy, those things happened under you, and as well as, you know, neighborhood schools at the elementary level. I mean, all kinds of things.
You know, Tony, and it's true. You know, I grew up a block from Conrad, and I remember when the desegregation order came in 1978. They closed the high school, Conrad. Yeah. They made it into a middle school. They also closed our elementary school. And that community was wounded, just very much like Claymont back then. And I never would have thought, number one, that I would have, you know, ended up in a seat like a superintendency to be able to maybe do something to kind of bring back the spirit of that community.
Yes.
And the Conrad experience was just awesome. I mean, everybody was part of what happened there. And to go from a traditional middle school to a 612 like we had at Callaway, to a school where no one really wanted to come to a school where there's a waiting list of hundreds of kids now to get into, and a community now that is just vibrant. It's really been a great journey. But again, it was all about the community and just opening the door and kind of helping people guide themselves really to a new day for Conrad is some of what I'm trying to do in Christina right now.
And by the way, I got to say this because this was a pet peeve. I said, who's trying to get rid of the Redskins mascot? Whoever's trying to do that does not know what they're doing, because that was part of the deal, right? I mean, bringing back the traditions, getting instant buy-in from the alumni. I mean, it's like, if you don't like it, you don't have to go there. It's a magnet school, folks. I mean, am I right about that, or what?
No, that's true. And you know, and the thing about the Conrad, the Redskin, that, you know, in my view, was never and still is not a, quote, racial slur. No. That was respect.
Exactly. It's being,
you know, almost 100 years now. It was back in the 30s when that school was founded. So that kind of respect is really what made that symbol powerful. And to turn it into what they've turned it into, I just don't agree with it. And the alumni, I mean, as you know, it's amazing how many people went to Conrad through the years. And I hope it works out for the better, because they've been talking about this for almost a year, I think. And I think it's a mistake to go away from it, but you know, that's going to be the community's decision ultimately, I guess.
Now, President Minahan, Dr. A has been around the block a couple times. So when you needed an interim superintendent, I guess, how did you get connected with Bob Andrzejewski?
Well, I knew about him because I knew the work he'd done in Red Clay. And I had several friends who knew him personally. And I talked to them, and they connected me with him, and I called him. He was on summer vacation.
That's right.
I said, I got to find somebody. And it was important to me and to our board to bring in some experience, someone who had worked in schools, particularly in the kinds of schools we have. We have urban schools and suburban schools, so we have those two different environments. And somebody who had a vision for getting our district up and moving again. And
Yeah.
he was the right person to do it.
And similar to Red Clay, Christina and Red Clay are the two biggest school districts in the state. And I think Red Clay may have passed
Yeah.
Christina, but they're basically neck and neck. And one of the things that makes Christina so big is the fact that the Delaware Autism program is based in Christina, and so is the Delaware School for the Deaf. I mean, those are statewide schools. That's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, to have those schools as part of the Christina operations.
Yeah, they've been there as long as I remember.
Yeah.
And it really is, it's really kind of an honor in a sense. I was a special education teacher, so I have worked in schools, I've worked in special schools, and I've always had a special place in my heart for young people who have handicaps, whether they're learning or physical handicaps or whatever it may be. So again, for a school district to have that kind of a program and the quality of those programs,
Oh, yeah.
people come from other states into our school district, as they did in Red Clay at times, to be part of the autistic program, the School for the Deaf, and other things. It's really, a shining star for not just Christina, but the state of Delaware. But I think it's really a powerful example of the value of public education. We truly do try to meet the needs of all children, and sometimes people forget that when they get caught up in the issues like referendum. You kind of, try to keep your eye on the ball, on the kid, because that's really where it should be.
People have moved here to put their children in the school, the Brennan School, and in the School for the Deaf.
Yeah, I have to say, in full disclosure, my oldest daughter, Regan, is in the Delaware Autism Program Satellite at McClary Elementary School, and that was the first time when we realized she had autism and got her in that program. Regan was born with Down syndrome, so she was already in special ed, but when we realized she had autism as well, which happens with 10% of children with Downs, we got her in the DAP, and she started doing much better. And not too far from there, my youngest goes to Holy Angels, which is our parish school for my wife and I.
Almost across the road.
Yeah, yeah, basically. So it's nice to be able to drop them off, pretty close to one another. But Bob, you're coming back and you're being thrust into a hornet's nest. Madam President Minahan asked you to help you support this referendum. But I appreciate you guys coming out to answer some of the tough questions that people want to know. There was an article in the paper today. So you guys are trying to get, your message out. So first of all, let's start with the basics. When is the referendum? And where is it going to be held? Or should I say, where can people vote for the referendum?
It's going to be held March 23rd, and there are 30 sites where people can vote. 24 of them are in Newark and in the county, mostly in schools.
Yes.
And then there are 6 sites in the city, which are mostly in schools. But that will be, it's on the district website now, and I imagine it will be published in the print media as we get closer to that date. But we've got several new polling sites this year, the Boys and Girls Club out on Route 40, the First Presbyterian Church on Main Street in Newark, and the Bayer Library and the Newark Free Library are all going to be polling sites.
And it starts in the morning and goes into the evening?
10 o'clock in the morning on the 23rd, and polls close at 8 p.m. in the evening.
So pretty much any school in Christina, plus a few other places, people can go to vote on March 23rd.
And all you have to do is show proof that you're a resident of the Christina School District. You do not have to be a registered voter, and you do not have to be a property owner.
All right. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me just ask you point blank, you know what kind of economic times we're in. So why in the world should anybody support your proposal for a tax increase? You know, school districts are unique in the state of Delaware in that you're really the only governmental entity that asks the voter for a tax increase. Everybody else, you know, they pass legislation to do this, but you ask people for an increase in the operating tax. So why in the world should anybody support the tax increase?
Well, I think, Tony, we take your words and apply them to this referendum process. I think it's time for legislation to do away with the referendum process and go back to a model that the Newcastle County and the VOTEC school districts use, which is they're allowed to raise operating revenue within a cap established by the General Assembly. That way, as inflation goes up, you can incrementally increase the taxes to keep pace with inflation. The state of Delaware, I'm a native Delawarean, been around a long time. In Christina, and this applies really across the state, we have a high poverty rate. Somewhere between 30 and 35% of our students live in poverty. Layer on top of that, we have the highest number of homeless children in a district in the state. Layer on top of that, the aging Delaware. Christina is like the rest of the state. It's getting older. More and more folks are retiring. People are coming in from New Jersey and New York and Baltimore and every place else because the low property tax.
Right.
So you with the poor, the homeless, the seniors, and the fact that our economy, the wages in this state and country haven't really gone up much since the Great Recession of 2008. People don't have a lot of extra money. So I keep asking the question, where is the eligible voter pool? You know, this process might have worked 50 years ago, but in today's Delaware, it's time for a change. Thus, we can't do anything about it right now, but I'm hoping our elected officials are seriously looking at alternative models, and it's not just here. Go downstate Delaware and some of the smaller districts, they're struggling with the same kind of economic issues. So, in spite of that, I've been on a journey, with Harry Allen and others to kind of paint a new Christina. I branded these words, a new Christina. As I come in October, we cannot change the past. We can learn from the past, but we can't change it. So I'm a Disney guy. Always loved Disney. Used to watch it, when I was a kid on TV, black and white TV, by the way. You came into the color TV generation, but not me. And in Disney, as we all know, no matter how evil the villain or villainess is, usually in the end, always in the end, the good guy or girl comes out on top. So there's a character in Frozen. If people have seen the movie Frozen, the Disney movie that was real popular, Elsa, she sang a song. One of the songs she sang there was, "Let it go, let it go, let it go." I've kind of coined that in my public comments. Let it go, the past in Christina. There's nothing much we can do about it now. We have to look forward. And every time I walk into a school or go into an event and you see all these young people, from the steel band at Christiana High School to the steel band at Bancroft and Palmer to the classrooms where the kids are working the computers, when you look at that, I mean, it energizes me and hopefully energizes this community to say, you know what, we need to put aside our adult issues for time and let's support this and give the schools the money they need to be able to help these kids. Because today, let's face it, with all the issues facing kids today, the school and I think the churches, there aren't many stable institutions left. A lot of the families have issues today. So we are taking on more and more responsibility. In return for that, I would hope the community would understand and start to support us more. Instead of being critical of what isn't what they would like to see, try to be part of the solution and help us become better at what we're doing to serve the needs of our kids. So with that frame around this tough process, I keep trying to encourage people, there is a new day. And I brought some of when I talked to the people over the last 5 months, I asked them, what do you really want for your schools and community? If you're losing hundreds of kids every year to the charter schools, to the VOTECs, to whatever, there's something there that the parents and kids want that you aren't offering. So the Christina schools and community need to look at what's working and build on that. But changes are in order. For example, in Red Clay, we had a parent group that really believed in the K-8. St. John the Beloved right down the road, St. Catherine's was right down the road. Brandywine Springs decided that would be a good thing. Small number of middle school kids together for 9 years, that's all good. So I said, what if, you know, an elementary school or two in Christina wanted to take a look at that? And then I went into, you know, the high school pieces. You mentioned them earlier. You know, the niches. You know, we have a military academy. We have a charter school in Wilmington. We have a performing arts school. Why couldn't, you know, Newark, for example? It already had a strong academic piece, and it also has a strong performing piece. What if Newark became a charter Callaway? You don't have to be a charter, but just, you know, beef up the programming, and you can almost replicate at Newark High what they're doing up there. Same thing in Glasgow. I bet, did you know that Glasgow has a pharmacy tech program partnered with Walgreens, right? Okay, so there's, you know, okay, so they have this far. So when I talked to the principal, Dean Ivory, you know, where did you like to see your school go? He says, well, you know, we're going to take our pharmacy tech, build on it, and actually we'd like to do what Conrad's doing. We'd like to have a medical schools of science, nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, et cetera, and then beef up the vocational program, because Hodson's right down the street. Lots of kids don't get into Hodson, so why don't we work with Hodson and Deltech and beef up our vocational programs? And the principals are putting this stuff together. This is part of this new Christina. Christiana, I go to the last high school in the Christina district. They used to have a really strong ag science program and a strong horticulture program. For whatever reason, it's kind of gone away or decayed or declined over the years. But, you know, so where do you want to go for the future? They wanted to take their roots and build on it. So we're looking, you know, at a potential future of solar classrooms with state-of-the-art greenhouses, with a bio-animal science component, partnerships with people like DuPont and Pioneer Seed, Stein Lab that does a lot of research in this area. They also have an engineering and an IT piece that they want to add in. So this is what this new Christina is starting to take shape. And I didn't want it to be just words, but I really took my experiences in Red Clay and brought it down and said, look, what do you want? Because then it's not just words. Go to Callaway, go to Conrad, go to Brandywine. And the parents can start to talk to the parents and ultimately shape a new vision for the school district. And I was blessed. I was very fortunate to have the support we needed to do these things. And that's the sense I get in Christina now. They're ready for a change. And if they don't change, things are not looking good. Christiana High School is down to maybe 800 kids or so, or maybe off by a little bit. So realistically, if they continue to lose enrollment, what would you do? Close the school. So would you rather close the school, or would you rather beef it up? And this is where the 612 came from, you know, like a Cab Callaway or Conrad. So this is all I'm doing is really opening doors and of conversation and giving them some ideas, and the people are now coming back, and that's why I'm very encouraged that this referendum is viewed as kind of like a speed bump. You know, when you're going down the road, you got to slow down in a speed bump. Once we get past the speed bump, then it's smooth sailing for the next couple of years toward the things that I've been kind of describing here, but things which the community are now saying back to me are things that they would want. And Harry Allen, I'm not sure, you know, what you're hearing back from that energy, but I've been really pleased that they're going from talk already into planning mode.
Yeah, people are excited because they know what Red Clay was doing, and they sat by and watched Red Clay do it. And we started losing kids, and the kids we were losing were going to Red Clay. They were going to find those programs they wanted. So we should be able to do the same thing in our schools. And there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of it.
You guys bring up a good point. You know, Red Clay, heretofore, has been the only school district in the state to charter schools. Any other charter in the state of Delaware comes from the Delaware Department of Education.
True.
Red Clay was very innovative. Again, that's a testament to the work you did there, Dr. Aniszewski. But you touched on something that makes it even harder for Christina. You're losing them not only to the magnet and charter schools in Red Clay, you're also losing them to the VOTEC schools, which the dirty little secret in the state of Delaware is the VOTECs are more often an escape from the traditional public schools than they are for the intended purpose, which was a vocational education. You take a look at how many kids are going to college after going to VOTEC school, and you'll see they weren't really there because they wanted to learn a trade, okay? And the other thing is, to me, You can correct me if I'm wrong. But the Newark Charter School is basically a resurrection, a reconstitution of the old Newark Special School District. And that's why people flock there. Now they're going K to 12. And that's a very formidable opponent. That's your #1 foe. I mean, in terms of like the challenges that Christina faces in northern Newcastle County. And am I correct about that? I mean, come on, let's face it, Newark Charter, there's a reason why they're successful. You know, starting with, you know, Greg Meese, he learned with Ron Russo over at Charter School Wilmington. The guy came with credentials. You got to give them credit for what they've done, but at the same time, that's your main competitor.
And also, though, they're limited in how many they can take. There are more people who want their kids to have that kind of education but don't get in than there are who get in. So those parents are our parents, and we need to be able to offer them, I believe, something that is similar to what Newark Charter is offering.
And Tony, you hit on two big issues. The VOTECs of today are not what the VOTECs of yesterday were.
No, they're not.
And everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And then there's some justification because of the technical skills required today, even as an auto mechanic. You've got to be able to read the computer, the diagnostics, et cetera, et cetera. But now we have a whole subset of kids who don't get the trade skills they need to do anything. They're coming out of high school unskilled, and they're not going to college. I mean, some of these kids just are not interested in college. So I think what's needs to happen now is we need to work together instead of work against each other. Help us beef up our vocational programs for those kids that maybe the trades is one of the big things. Del Tech is stepping up. I don't know if you're familiar with the manufacturing program at Del Tech.
No.
They also have a program for, and these are some Red Clay kids, high school kids in it, they're learning the building trades, carpentry, masonry, electrical, and everything. So they've actually picked up the ball as a partner to kind of fill in this gap. So with the right people at the table, between the vocational schools, the Del Techs, and our traditional high schools, I think that we can beef up and serve these kids without getting into these turf wars, which is really always, it's been around for a long time. And the second piece, coming from a district where we believe that schools are schools. I used to say we have a system of schools. Get some charter schools, got some magnet schools, you got some traditional schools, whatever. Instead of looking at Newark Charter as a competitor, we ought to look at it as what do they have that the parents want, and step up your game. I went through this with AI DuPont High School and the Charter School of Wilmington years ago, so I know the context. The parents were upset because a lot of the, quote, top kids were going to the Charter School of Wilmington. And I remember I put a new principal in there and challenged him to up the game of AI so that your academics were so strong that people would not want to leave, one, and if they did, others would want to come in. And true, back in the heyday AI, we had 1,400, we were out of room. We were getting, in this economy, a lot of our kids from the private schools, they couldn't afford it.
They used to call them the trailers.
Extra
classrooms.
Right, right. Then we finally put a wing on and off it went. So, with Newark Charter, or Kumba or Aspira or whoever it is, a spirit of shared collaboration, I think would get us a lot farther than us, it's us and them. And that's, again, I've had these conversations with some of the charter leaders about how can we work, and that's because that's what we did when we had our own charter schools. If you were the head of DMA and needed some technical assistance, one of your cameras went down or something, we would have some in-kind support that we would lend you. It didn't cost you money. And in return, they would do some things for us. So
I could never be Chuck Baldwin, by the way.
No, well, Master Chief, a shout out to Chuck, he's a good friend. But my point is, somewhere in Delaware, and I think Dan Rich did a really nice job with this a while back. He wrote about the fragmented school system in Delaware, the public education system. We're talking about it. You got VOTEC here, you got charter here, you got traditional, and really these are all our kids. All the tax money's paying for all of these programs, and we ought to have some kind of common vision about how we can all work together to benefit our kids instead of, this is my school and I'm taking your kids, and as part of that's the culture in this state. The education culture in Delaware has to change. We got into this thing in the last administration out of Washington where you were going to punish people when they didn't do what they told you what to do, how to do it. If you didn't do it their way, then they would threaten to take away your money or do other things. Business has been built on collaboration, creativity. We need to move, I think, from a culture of compliance, which we have in Delaware now, to one of collaboration and creativity. Small business, entrepreneurship, that's what we need our schools to become more like now. Now today, all they're looking to do is to cover themselves with the test scores and all. So Christina, you know, some of what we're talking about in the new Christina is already underway in the classrooms. Less testing, trying to take more paperwork off our teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So this isn't rocket science. This is a mindset for people, I think, that is hopefully coming now, because the feds have given us new opportunity with the reauthorization of ESEA.
Well, we're coming up on a break shortly here, but before we get to that and then continue our conversation, let me just ask, back to the referendum at hand, how will this improve schools and students? You know, it's like the old question, how much of the referendum is going to go to the kids, you know, directly? Can you touch on that right before we get to the break?
Sure. Well, actually, almost all the money is going to the kids. You know, the budget increases that they will get directly impacts books and supplies and materials and extracurriculars for the kids. That's a big piece of it. The other piece is to hire back to what we had a year ago, teachers, more teachers. In fact,
78.
yeah, good memory. 78 teachers and 14 aides were laid off. Directly impacts the kids. The school climate, we're putting an extra $1 million into looking at this issue of climate and discipline, and that's all designed, again, rather than Bob A. or Tony or somebody telling the community, here's what we're doing, we're going to work together and figure out what works best. More alternatives to suspension, other maybe timeout programs, we may need some mental health workers. This is all going to get shaped, again, right to the kids. And actually, there's money built in. Our charter schools get money from us. You know, the kids who live in Christina, who go to the charters, they get the local portion of what we put in for a student. So there's even money built in, so if we're successful, the charter schools will be getting more money down the road as well. So this goes back to my point about we're all in this together. We just kind of have to change the way we were looking at things. But this is all geared toward the kids in the schools. There's not really any fluff on this one.
All right, well, we are up on a hard break. Please keep it tuned here to NCC TV. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Christina, Board of Education President Harry Ellen Minahan, and Interim Superintendent Bob Andrzejewski. Keep it right here on NCC TV. If you have an idea for Spotlight On, please send an email to amprado@nccde.org. As always, thank you for watching NCC TV on Comcast Channel 22 and Verizon Channel 29. All right, welcome back to Spotlight On, and today the spotlight is on the Christina Referendum coming up. Christina School Board President Minahan and Interim Superintendent Dr. Andrzejewski are here. They're in the hot seat to talk about it. And you've talked about the new Christina. But before we get to that, let's talk about how the referendum would enhance the existing programs in the Christina School District.
Well, like Dr. Andrzejewski said, we had to lay off 78 teachers last year, and I believe it was 14 paraprofessionals. If we can bring those people back, we have money to bring them back, we can reduce some of the sizes of some classes, and that's going to be very beneficial to the kids. Also, we can use money for some educational costs, some resources that are used in the classroom. I don't like to go on Facebook and see teachers out there pleading for people to donate money so that they can get the supplies they need in their classrooms. They shouldn't have to do that, and they shouldn't have to be spending their own money to do that. So if we can get this referendum passed, we'll be able to put some of that money back in. It won't be everything we need, but it'll be such a good start that will be a plus for us.
You know, one of the other areas that's very strong in Christina are the performing and fine arts, and we've had to reduce funding to those programs as well. For example, when bands need new uniforms, we used to have money set aside for them to buy new uniforms or instrument repair. Your instruments break, you need new instruments. The funding for those kinds of things has gone away. We're looking to bring them back. In fact, you know, one of the real neat things about Christina, they had formed, and Harry Ellen, you may know the name of it, the council, the Arts Council.
The Student Advisory Council?
No. The group that the group of performing arts teachers that work with that budget.
I don't know the name, but I know
Yeah,
that.
actually the teachers, there's a formalized group that actually will sit there and make decisions. We give them money and they have to decide where it goes throughout the performing arts in the school district, which is awesome because, you know, why should I or you or somebody decide what they need? They know they're there, let them best decide. So some of this will be bringing back funding for some of the things they absolutely need. One of the other things that most people don't realize, there's this thing called dual credit. Kids can earn college credits while they're in high school. The district pays for that. Parents save a lot of money for that, and there's agreements with, I think, Wilmington U, Del Tech, and I think even some with the University of Delaware. Glasgow, for example, those students are eligible to earn up to 29 college credits. That's a whole semester of college. Delaware, that's what, 14,000. Villanova, it's probably 45,000. I mean, that is a real plus that I don't think a lot of the community is aware of. So, I mean, keeping that kind of program alive, talk about tax dollars being invested in your kids. You know, they're paying for those opportunities for those kids. It's saving parents a lot of money. And we mentioned the vocational piece. That's huge. Vocational programs have to actually go down to the middle schools. That's one of the issues. You know, you hear the middle schools, or you know, whatever the issues are. There's a lot good going in the middle schools, but they need to update their exploratories and offerings too, so that they line up the career pathways in the high schools. So they're some of the enhancements that we're looking forward to here when this thing passes on the 23rd.
And what Dr. Andrzejewski mentioned about the dual enrollment programs, there are AP courses that kids can take, advanced placement classes they can take in high school to get college credit. You have to take an exam at the end of each one of those courses. And if you don't take the exam, you don't get the college credit. Well, the district up to now has been paying for those kids to take that exam. If we don't have the funding, parents will have to pay, and all parents can't afford to do that. I think tests are, what, $95 for each test? So if your child is taking 2 or 3 AP classes, that can start to run up to be a lot of money. So.
Well, speaking of money, before I forget to ask, what kind of percentage are you asking for in this tax increase for the March 23rd referendum? You know, and related to that, let's go back in time for a little bit. Christina tried to pass a referendum twice. The first time, it went down in flames. We're talking about a year and a half ago. Second time, you guys asked for less, and you guys came close, but no cigar. So why are you feeling optimistic this time? What's different about this referendum? Did you scale it back again? You tell me.
It is scaled back. Last year, I think if I remember right, it was 37 cents per 100. This time it's 30 cents per $100 of assessed value. But we haven't run a referendum since 2010. Most districts run one about every 2 years. So we're living on 2010 dollars right now. And our expectation is to win this referendum, do the kind of planning that Dr. Andrzejewski is talking about so that we can get a firm idea of the direction we want to go, then go out for a larger referendum in 2 years, or maybe the legislature will come to their senses and we won't have to go to referendum, and we can put these plans into place.
By the way, I just want to say something real quick. You mentioned that the tax rate is based on per $100 of assessed property value, and Dr. Andrzejewski, you could say better than I can probably, but your property is based on an assessed property value from 1983. So you might be living in a $300,000 house in Glasgow, but it's actually, you know, let's say $65,000, whatever the assessed property value was in '83. Then for every $100 of property value, that is multiplied by a tax rate. Like in Christina's, it's like what, close to $2, less than $2.
A little less.
And so, and you're essentially asking to increase that rate by a certain amount of cents, which, by the way, that's, do you know off the top of your head what percentage that is? Like, are you asking for like a 5% increase, 10%?
I should have that number. Actually, I do know we're asking for 20% less than they did last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't have that figure at my fingertips in terms of a percentage of increase, but it's significantly less than what it was. Harriana, do you have that percentage by any chance?
No, but
So we can
It's-
get,
it's about $1.62 right now per 100.
Okay, so
if
it's
you add 30
$1.62.
cents, it's $1.92.
Right.
okay,
will
so
go
we
to.
could figure out a graphic to put the percentage
Right.
on there.
And if you go to there's a calculator on our website that'll give you the exact amount for your property, so you know exactly how much you would pay.
And
So we'll
assessed
put that
value
up.
is not the same as market value.
Right.
Right, exactly. Two different things. So it is scaled back from the last time, which is part of the referendum cycle. It didn't pass the first couple times. So I guess, would you say this percentage that you're asking for now is more fair, that it's more reasonable in terms of trying to convince people to support this?
Actually, I have not heard a lot of talk about the money aspect of it. People aren't talking about that. They're talking about what this will do for the kids. So we're taking, I think maybe last year we focused on the money when we should have been focusing on the kids, because talking about what we're going to do for the kids and for the schools is an argument that people understand. They understand taxes too, but they do understand that if you improve your schools, you improve your community. If you improve your community, people want to come here. Businesses want to come here, people want to live here. And that in the end will help your property values, if you want to look at it that way.
And Tony, earlier I talked about, you know, us working together, all schools. It gets even bigger than that. When you take a look at economic development, folks who pay attention to what a business looks at when they're thinking about coming to a state or actually staying in a state, the quality of the public education system is always in the top three of indicators. And so, in terms of a taxpayer, in terms of a business owner, in terms of community groups, the better job that the schools do in getting kids ready for the job market, the higher they will be, the higher the indicator will be for businesses and others in terms of wanting to come here, stay here, and ultimately, once they make that investment, your property value goes up. And that's, you know, in Christina, if you go for a home equity loan now, or you go to sell your house, you're probably not getting what you should. If we can get this school district rolling to places where we described earlier, you're going to watch to see the property values go up, and that's going to benefit everybody. So for, you know, $192 a year, you could reap thousands and thousands of property value gain. And again, I'm not just using those numbers, just not making them up. Remember when Brandywine Springs opened? It went from K5, then it went to K8. It became so popular when that school opened that the property values in Heritage Park and down along Milltown Road went up $15,000 to $20,000 almost overnight, because the people who lived in those communities could go to that school. So
Some people thought it was the best school in the state.
yeah, so there's a definite connect between property value and the quality of the school, even if you choose to go elsewhere, even if you choose to go to a private school or charter, whatever. It's still the public school system is a big push. And again, in Delaware, with us struggling to try to bring businesses to the state, if this district, Christina, really can meet the needs of the community, both the educational needs of the kids as well as the business needs, it's going to be a big economic driver. So again, another reason why the community ought to seriously think about supporting this, because it has impacts beyond the schools that would impact, you know, their lifestyle in this county and in this state.
Well, Bobby, you're exactly right. I mean, my boss, County Executive Thomas P. Gordon, is always paying attention to what's going on in the school districts, because when he's talking to Economic Development Director Marcus Henry about attracting business to Newcastle County, that's like at the top of the list. How good are the schools? You know, and it's something that we need to address as a whole in Newcastle County, Delaware. But your point also leads me to my next question, which is, you know, not to sound like I'm following the Republican primary too closely. Actually, I am. I'm addicted.
I think I'll sit down there.
You know, Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, the so-called pundits are admitting that he is building a coalition. The Republican Party is seeing voters that they have not seen for decades, for years. And I think you guys are in the same position. You have a hybrid family like myself. We have one child in public school and one child in Catholic school. Then you have other families that are all public school. Then you have families that are charter schools. Then you have, some that are all private or Catholic, ProCo. It seems to me like you need to build a coalition to get this referendum passed. I mean, do you agree with that or not? I'll give you an example. I covered school referenda for 13 years, in upstate New York or here in the state of Delaware. And I remember coming across Mr. and Mrs. Mr. and Mrs. Watt at Brandywine School District when they were trying to get one of their referenda. It's like you said, every couple of years they come out and say, expenses have risen, we need more money. And I went to school with Mr. and Mrs. Watts' son, Alan, at Salesianum. Bob and I were both Sally's guys.
Right.
And they were supporting the referendum because they wanted to support the local public school district and therefore preserve the community and enhance property values. It was, they were looking at it like globally, I mean universally, whatever, they were looking at it big picture. So can you talk about that phenomenon? Like, do you need to build a coalition of support for this referendum?
Go ahead, you can take the first crack. I'll take the second crack.
Yeah, I'm from California, and they have a somewhat similar but somewhat less complicated funding setup for schools there, but they do vote for referendums to support their schools. You've got to take a look, I think, at the whole society in your community. You've got good schools, that generates a stronger community. And this country was founded on the principle of free public education for our students. So that's how you're going to build your democracy. We've let some of that fall away. And I think I know that sounds like a college professor's view of it, but that's how I look at it. To keep the country strong, we have to have a strong public school system. And when my husband and I moved to Delaware, everyone said, you want to live in Christina. That's where the good schools are. Yeah. Our house was advertised, the paper, the ad said Christina School District. They don't say that now. They say property backs on Newark Charter. They don't say you can't get in because there's a lottery, but it backs on Newark Charter. Schools are important. Senior citizens know they're important. People without children know they're important. Parents know they're important. And I think everybody is getting behind this vision that Dr. A has outlined. That we sat back in Christina for a long time and we watched Red Clay march forward. They're a neighboring district. They were creating all these things and we sat by and we weren't doing anything. Now it's our turn, we have to do it.
And Tony, you said in your question, do you need to build a coalition? I will say to you, we are building the coalition. Yeah. And I like to do a special shout out to the variety of the community groups and business leaders that I've met with over the past 5 months. For example, the Boys and Girls Club down in the Bear Glasgow area. Tremendous supporters, and they're going to be supporters on March 23rd as well. The YMCA, Bear Glasgow. Again, just great open door support. Now, this is a two-way street. They're looking to help us, but we're also looking to help them. Fields, the Canal Little League, they're another one. It was tremendously supportive of what we're trying to do. They need some fields, they need some spaces. We work with them, they work with us. This is community.
And these are places our kids go after school.
That's right.
Yeah, those are our kids that were there.
Right. So this is something that's kind of needed to be boosted up, built up or whatever, but this coalition continues to grow. Newcastle County Chamber of Commerce, University of Delaware, Delaware Technical and Community College. We're talking to Christiana Care, a group called the Delaware Decision Makers, and I could go on and on and on. Talk to all these folks, private school leaders, charter school leaders, and we're all on the same page. This is a bigger issue than 30 cents on 100 hours of assessed value. This is about what we're doing with our kids during the day, after the day, on the weekends. Ultimately, how do we get them into a job where the job needs are. And in my spare time someday, I want to try to put a new model together and call it the responsive high school. You know, we have this thing called response to intervention in the education world, where you're supposed to try to adjust to the individual student's needs. I think our high schools ought to be able to adjust to the job market needs. And so as a skill comes up, and here's a perfect example, Bloom Energy, they have some very specialized welding that needs to occur on their assembly line. It's not the welding of, you know, working on a car or something like that. So they went to a local school that does welding, and they worked with the welding teacher and kids to create the specialized welders that could work in Bloom Energy. That's a responsive high school. The industry need and skill is X. The school either has it or they adjust to it, and that's the businesses working with the schools directly. And that's what happens in other parts of the country. If you do research, you know, you take a look at ExxonMobil, Toyota, and others. They have worked directly with their schools and their communities, helping get the kids ready for the jobs that those big companies and corporations offer. We've started down that way with career pathways in this state, but I think we need to take it to another level, which is a much more responsive level. So that's something. Again, this is where this all kind of fits together. Coalition building. Yeah, we're already on the road.
And like you said earlier, Newcastle County's got an aging population. A lot of people are going to be retiring. Those jobs have to be filled.
Yep.
And we want to fill them with our own people, our kids. Every kid doesn't want to go to college. Every kid doesn't really need to go to college. But they need to be able to have a fulfilling life and be able to find an occupation that they enjoy and that they're very skilled at. And we need to be able to help them with that.
Well, you know, the next thing I wanted to ask you about was something that I think that public schools as a whole need to tackle head on, and that's school climate. You know, discipline. How strong is discipline? You know, parents want their children to learn and to be safe in school. And, you know, they talk about in law that possession is 9/10 of the law. I like to say that, you know, perception is 9/10 of reality. And sometimes, fair or not, public schools get a bad rap as being undisciplined, meaning that sometimes the administrators and teachers' hands are tied when it comes to school discipline in this politically correct era that we live in. But it seems to me that we need to get to some old-fashioned principles here. You know, in Proverbs, King Solomon said, "Teach a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he shall not depart from it." I know you're not allowed to say that. I'm saying it. You know, you guys are a public school district, but it seems to me we've gotten away from that, and that's the perception you guys are battling. What, you know, my eldest daughter came home with a flyer about how the referendum is going to improve school climate. Can you please elaborate on what you guys are trying to get at there?
Sure. You know, Tony, your point is well taken. Young people will adjust to the expectation established for them. If you lower the bar and say it's okay for you to talk back to a teacher, it's okay for you to curse at a teacher, it's okay for you to do whatever, the kids go about and continue to do that. If you
They're not stupid. They're gonna pick up on that.
Amen. So if the expectation, right, is you will not respect the responsibility or the kind of the themes of everything we do in these schools, the kids will adjust. And those who don't, you have to have alternatives in place to kind of work with the kids. And if they don't shape up, then you have to find another environment for them. I'm really big in alternative environments. In this country, not one size fits all. And some kids function better in small environments with somebody that really keeps on them the structure. You can't do that when you got 30, 35 kids in a class. So I think the system needs to continue to evolve, and that's what we're trying to figure out here. Suspending kids, sending them home on the street, they want that. So why don't you have, you know, like they do in some cities, these alternative to suspension academies. So when you're suspended, you still got to go to school. You're just not in here, you're over here. You've got work to do, and you've got to earn your way out. There are other ways to get to this, and the mental health issues today for young people are just unbelievable. You know, it's sad, but I mean, there's all kinds of issues out there. And then a kid who has multiple issues with you know, whatever it is, anger management or being able to react to stimuli, they don't take their medication, they go off and they hit kids, they hit teachers. And this is the stuff that makes the media. And you know, when you track it back and you see the kid didn't take his medication, or the parent didn't have the money to get the medication. So we have to build some safety nets in for some of these kids, because you're right, you are absolutely right. Perception becomes reality, and one example becomes the school climate, and it doesn't. And that's what we've got to figure out. We have to do a better job in Christina and actually everywhere, because that is one of the big raps against public schools. And I don't care, anybody that really knows and works with kids will tell you, being soft on them isn't doing them any favors. I don't care, you're white, black, green, yellow, whatever. The kids are kids, and we need to work together as adults and make sure the kids understand, because they respond. I mean, I am always been amazed at kids who come from tough environments, you know, homeless or abusive situations or drug-addicted families. Those kids still want to be loved and cared for, and once they sense that of you as a teacher or a principal, whatever, you know, they open up. Once they trust, they want to learn, and they'll try to do. Today, with so much on the plates of our teachers and principals, you know, in this data-driven environment, we've forgotten the kid and the heart of the kid. And that's why I'm hoping that, you know, this pendulum is going to swing back now. You're hearing this thing called whole child. Well, I never left the whole child myself, but you know, the school system did. You know, the data point. The kids became data points. Test, intervention. I come in. You know, I had someone shot on my front step last night, like as a kid. I mean, the trauma. We have got to go back. This education is not business. Can principles apply the way we run? Yes, but it is not business. So to expect all kids to pass a state test at the same time ain't going to happen. You know, we're in America in the track meet. Does everyone cross the finish line at the same time? Kids move in the right direction toward their capacities. That's what we should be encouraging. So in Christina, this culture of, you know, focusing on the kid, but getting this discipline piece right. Right meaning we got to have higher expectations, and the kids have to have consequences. But you know, I used to say we suspend with love. No offense, Tony, but you did this, you have to do this, and then you know, come back at it. There are ways to do this, and we have to do this, because people now, the politically correct stuff. Oh, you don't want to. You know, you don't want to. Well, the kids, they know what's going on. They're adapting to a lowered expectation in a lot of cases, and we have to figure out, not punitive. This is all helpful toward growth as a person, but we gotta do better with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you mentioned love. I mean, to me, discipline is a form of love. It's
It
like
is.
when we rear our children, we're correcting them not to be mean.
That's right.
We're doing it because we love them and we want them to do better. And like, no, you can't do that. No, you're not going to get away with that.
Right.
And I feel like that's one of the challenges you guys face.
Some of the kids that enter school don't really know
Right.
what's mean and what's
That's
not
true.
mean.
You gotta
They
teach
don't
'em.
they don't know what it means. You can stand there and say, you know, you have to respect the adults in this building. They don't even know what you're talking about. They don't understand that because they haven't been taught that. So you start at that level and you have to build up, whether they're in first grade or fifth grade. So, but kids can do it. Like I say, I taught downtown for 18 years. I never had trouble in my classes. I just didn't. I would spend the first 3 weeks of the school year making myself so important to those kids that they wanted to please me. They wanted to do what would please me and please them. And then you didn't have trouble. But that was before the advent of testing. We didn't start testing them the first day they showed up. So I was a person to them. I wasn't just somebody sitting at that desk in the front of the room. But there are a lot of challenges. They're social challenges. They're not school, I don't believe they're school-induced challenges. I think they're all across the country. And they're exaggerated and amplified in urban areas.
So you talked about the community effort. You're working with the Boys Club, Little League, you know, different groups that you know, are ancillary to what students are doing in class. This maybe places they're going after school. What other forms of outreach are you doing? For instance, I mean, I've gotten a couple of messages at my house about the Christina Referendum coming up, reminding, you know, people it's coming up, please come out and vote. Is there any other outreach that you guys are doing? I mean, I mentioned the article in the paper today. You know, I feel like you guys are trying to reach far and wide. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
It is. And in fact, Tony, you know, one of the areas where I've spent a lot of time is with church leaders and pastors. Families of all economics go to churches, and you know, the pastors The church is one of the institutions that we absolutely have to hang on, like we do the public school system. Everything else is crumbling. And so I've been spending a lot of time talking to them, asking them for their support, but also trying to figure out ways to work with them to engage their youth. Again, there's ways where, after school, they could help us or we could help them run programs for kids. Again, I can go on and on. I was at a service on Sunday with a friend, and I participated in the service myself, and then went downstairs to answer questions. And when you get to the faith, faith is a thread that integrates people, I think. So that also can kind of cut through some of the issues. I'm not happy because my kid had a bad teacher, or blah 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 blah. But taking a look at the big picture. So you got the whole child. You also got, for a lot of people, some kind of a higher being or higher calling or a spiritual base. I think that outreach is something we've spent a lot of time on right now, because it'll transcend dollars and cents. It's a much bigger picture for the faith.
Well, we're coming up to the end of our program here, but for those who might have missed it, again, you're asking for 30 cents per $100 of assessed property value. When and where is the referendum?
March 23rd in just about all of our schools.
Yeah.
And in several other locations in the city of Wilmington. I believe there are 4 schools that have the, there are 4 schools plus the Quaker Hill Apartments.
Okay.
In the city of Wilmington. Out here in Newark, we have 24 locations, including the Bear Library, the Boys and Girls Club on Route 40, the Newark Free Library, and the Presbyterian Church on Main Street. And the list, I'm sure the list will be published in the newspaper. We'll see that it gets published, and it's on the Christina website. So you can find the locations. They were listed in the News Journal, I believe, last weekend as well.
And the Christina website, I believe, is christina.k12.de.us.
Yeah.
So people can go there for more information.
Yes, and there's also a Facebook. I believe there's a Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Down the bottom there. Right?
CSD Paving the Way. Facebook.com/CSD Paving the Way.
Gotcha.
And then there's Twitter, #CSD Paving the Way, and CSDPavingTheWay.com.
That's the website, yeah.
So those are all my questions, unless there was anything else that you guys wanted to add.
Don't know.
Covers it all. We said it all. All right. Well, I want to thank you both for coming in here today. I really appreciate it. It's very nice to meet you. Bob, it's always good to see you. Appreciate you guys coming in to ask all our questions about the referendum for the people. Well,
by the way, some of these sites, like the Facebook page, if people have questions, they can ask them and get answered there as well.
Good
so
to
they're
know.
Interactive.
Good to know. All right. Well, that'll wrap up this edition of Spotlight On. We've been talking about the Christina Referendum, which will be held March 23rd, which is coming up. I want to thank my crew today, Lisa Lancaster and Cindy Williams. For County Executive Thomas P. Gordon, this is Tony Prado for NCC TV. Thank you as always for watching. Take care.